So today is Tuesday, August 8th, 2023, and we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 5, The Cause of All Causes, texts 1 through 8, and I will read text 8. So if you have your devices, you can pull out the verse, and I'll give you some time. So again, that's Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 8. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jana Jana Shalakaya Chakshulumitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who was established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vancha kalpa tarubhasya kripa sindhubhyavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Vaishnav devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees and can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Pandit Srivas Thakur, and all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I pray that Shri Radha Kalachandji, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Gurudev use me as an instrument so that their message can flow through me to give me the words to serve the Vaishnavas listening. So, as I said today, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 5, The Cause of All Causes, Text 8. Please repeat. Etan me prachata sarvam sarvagya sakaleshvara vijanihi yathai vedam aham budhe nushashistita. Who would like to chant? Etan me prachata sarvam sarvakya sakaleshvara vijanihi yathai vedam aham bhute nushashitaha. Etan me prachata sarvam sarvagya shakaleshvara vijanihi yathai vedam aham budhe nushashitaha. Etat, all those, me, unto me, prichataha, inquisitive, sarvam, all that is inquired, sarvagya, one who knows everything, sakala, overall, ishvara, the controller, vijanihi, kindly explain, yatha, as, eva, they are, idam, this, aham, myself, buddhe, can understand, anushashitaha, just learning from you. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear Father, you know everything and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me, so that I may be able to understand it as your student. Purport. The inquiries made by Narada Muni are very important for everyone concerned, and as such, Narada requested Brahmaji to deem them suitable so that all others who may come in the line of disciplic succession of the Brahma Sampradaya may also know them properly without any difficulty. So I'll go back and read texts 1 through 7 and read text 8 again. Sri Narada Muni asked Brahmaji, O chief amongst the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul. Text 2. My dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Text 3. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Text 4. My dear Father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? Text 5. As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Text 6. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. Text 7. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities and perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Text 8. My dear Father, you know everything and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student. So, in these 8 verses, we're starting off with Narada Muni asking Brahma, his father, so many questions. And we'll go through, and I guess this is the beginning of the chapter 5, so chapter 5 will go through and answer systematically these questions that Narada Muni has put forward to Brahma. The key here, though, is that he's asking these questions in such a way as to demonstrate that he really wants to know the answers, right? He's saying, please kindly instruct it to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student. So as school is starting up, not just here at TKG Academy next week, but just Dallas ISD in Texas, school is starting up, and so many people are going back to becoming a student this semester. So let's explore what that means. What does it mean to you to be a student? Yes.
It means to be in a position of understanding that you don't know something and asking questions through knowing that you don't know and trying to absorb information to better understand a subject.
That's a great definition or meaning for student is knowing that you don't know something and asking questions and trying to understand information, right? So you're inquiring. Anything else? What it means to be a student? Yes? Willing to be disciplined. Now, discipline, there's 2 different meanings. They're very similar. So what meaning are you meaning?
Okay, great. Following rules, regulations, guidelines, right? So that's the meaning of discipline. So that is what it means to be a student, is to have that kind of discipline. Yes? Seeking to improve oneself, correct? So these are some great meanings of students. And in this case, Naradaji is presenting himself as a student, but we know him as being a teacher, right? We've encountered him as the teacher of Vyasadeva, who writes the Srimad Bhagavatam. We've encountered him as the teacher of Prahlad Maharaj. But in this position, he's a student. He's asking from Brahmaji. So one thing that we can glean from that is that every teacher is also a student, right? And in order to be a teacher, they have to be a student. And I can tell you, as a teacher, both my professions, right? I considered myself a teacher when I was practicing medicine as a physician, and obviously I consider myself a teacher as I'm teaching students history and English language arts and other subjects. I still consider myself very much a student because I can still learn from the students that I'm teaching and guiding, and I was learning from my patients as well, right? So I'm imparting one type of knowledge and I'm learning a different type of knowledge from them at the same time. So we can see this with Narada Muni, like he's the eternal, like, end all be all of spiritual masters, spiritual teachers, and yet here he is in this position of becoming a spiritual student himself. And the questions he asks, he's asking about the truth of the individual soul and supersoul. And he asks about the world, what's its background, how was it created, how is it conserved, whose control is it under. And then he asks about Brahma, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? And when I was writing out these questions, the thought that came to mind is like, he's asking these questions of his father, who's in this moment his spiritual teacher as well. And he's asking these questions in this idea of learning, right? But he asks him, what is the source of your knowledge? So he's asking his teacher for his credentials, but he doesn't ask it in a challenging way, right? Because when I was writing this, it kind of made me think of like, you in what army? Or, who gave you permission, right? Who died and made you king, right? But he doesn't ask it in that sense. And I was thinking about that, like all the times I've said that to someone, usually family members or, someone that you're very close to that's trying to tell you something and you're like, who gave you the authority who made you boss? But he doesn't ask him in that kind of question, that kind of mood. He asks him like, seriously, like, wow, where did you learn this information? Where's your source? So he's very curious. So it just got me thinking, like, what is that difference in questioning, right? One is a type of question, one mood is that type of question to learn, the other is not. So it got me thinking, what is the qualities of a student? So we talked about what does it mean to be a student, but what do you think are some qualities of a good student? Yes? Humility is a great quality. So expand on that. What does that look like? That's a great explanation of humility. It's understanding that you may not know, that you, in this moment, are, in this knowledge, are weaker, have some lack, some flaws, and that accepting that someone else might have the answers. Right. Any other qualities that we can think of for students? Listening.
Listening to what the instructor is saying rather than just hearing it and then forgetting about it later. So like internalizing the message that the instructor provided.
That's a really good point. So hearing and listening, so not just hearing it and then like forgetting about it, but internalizing it. It also means, you know, what does it mean to hear and listen? It also means that you're listening without trying to come up with a question or a response, and you're just listening to understand. So that's a great point. Yes.
I'd say that one of the qualities of students is to be thoughtful, not just sort of like hear and memorize, but actually like think deeply about what was heard, try to assimilate that, try to connect it to other things they heard, something experienced, and also to be open to changing their perspective. Because when you get knowledge and get new information, then sometimes you change your opinion, you change your outlook on the situation. So that's what learning is all about. Broadening perspective, shifting perspective,
That's a great point. So she first mentioned thoughtfulness, right? Say, taking what you're hearing and learning and figuring out how it relates to other things, making connections, so being very thoughtful about it and expanding on the internalizing, right? Internalizing the information. And then she said also being open, right? Learning new information may change your beliefs, your belief system, right? And that's what sometimes makes learning very scary, because we're so attached to our belief system, and that anything that can challenge that it's very uncomfortable. It can put us in a position of fear and anxiety, because it questions everything that we thought we knew, right? So when they first talked about the earth being round and not flat, entire quote-unquote scientific community was up in arms, because it changed fundamentally everything that they believed. Or when they found out that the earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around, right? So these kind of major shifts happen, and they happen all the time in the scientific community, because science is one field that is consistently saying that we're open, that we are just studying, and as we get more knowledge and facts, our whole belief system can change. Sometimes we think that to be in contrast to religion, which tends to say, okay, this is the way it is, and if it doesn't fit, then we're not going to agree with the facts or agree with what's presented, because it doesn't fit our belief system. The beauty of the Vedas and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is that what I'm finding is the more we find out the scientific study of the world, the more it confirms what's actually in here. And because the Vedas are so vast that everything is covered in there, that there's nothing quote unquote new. It's just being rediscovered in some ways. So these are great qualities. Does anyone have any other qualities that they think of as being a student? Exactly. So actually Prabhupada says that in Purport 1. The comment was, sorry, I'm going to repeat it for the people listening online. The comment was willing to take the subordinate position, right? Willing to accept that I don't know and this person does know and I can learn from them, and asking the right questions. And so from that, in the first purport of, for text 1 of these set of verses, Prabhupada says, therefore, asking for transcendental knowledge from the right person and receiving it properly is the regulation of disciplic succession. The inquisitive student must approach a qualified spiritual teacher to receive transcendental knowledge by surrender, submissive inquiries, and service. Knowledge received by submissive inquiries and service is more effective than knowledge received in exchange for money. So I thought that was a very profound statement, because it doesn't matter how much money you pay if you're not willing to learn, right? If you're not inquiring in such a way, in a submissive way, as he said, is, we want to be submissive when we make these inquiries. It's more effective than paying money for it. I took a coaching class, I guess, for a couple of years. It was a year-long class. And one of the big qualifications for, taking this course, as well as things that we're learning in as far as who to coach, there were 3 big qualities that my coach had said that we needed to look for in people. And these were that they needed to be willing, coachable, and hungry. So what does that mean, right? It means that they're willing to learn, they're willing to serve, right? They're willing to do what is required of them. They're willing to have that desire, And then coachable means that they're willing, again, they're moldable. They're saying, okay, I don't know, so teach me, and I will do as, you say, because I can see that you know more than I do in this matter. And then hungry just means having a strong, intense desire for the goals, what you want to achieve, so that you're willing and you're coachable to achieve them, right? So we can use those same kind of 3 qualities to talk about, when we're looking at spiritual aspects, the spiritual journey of being a student, lifelong student, really. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna confirms this. He says, the supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly persons understood it in that way, right? So this is how knowledge is presented. It's taught from, teacher to student, who becomes a teacher, who teaches a student, becomes a teacher, and so on and so forth. And then Prabhupada makes the point that these questions that Narada Muni puts forth, it's on the basis of factual cause and effect, and it's very reasonable. So he's saying that, we have to have these kind of questions. Like, these questions that he's asking are very important. He's not asking just for himself, but he's asking so that this knowledge will be out there. Because we have to remember when we were learning that Brahmaji is the first being to come into, existence, and he creates. He's tasked with creating the universe, and so he is the first teacher in that sense. He learns the information from Krishna. Well, we'll also learn exactly how he learns in this chapter, and that's part of what Narada Muni asks him. So he's not asking him anything unreasonable. He's not asking him anything that's showing challenging, like, I don't really believe you, so I'm going to challenge you. He's saying, like, I'm learning with an open heart. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to take on this knowledge. And he kind of has this hunger for it. He wants to know. He desires to have this knowledge so that he knows where his path can take him. So this most important part is inquiring submissively. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:34, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from them submissively and render service unto them. So this, again, reiterates this 3 things that we talked about: inquiring, submission, submissively, and then service, right? And that's more powerful than money. Because I paid for these coaching classes, but if I didn't have the willingness, right, if I wasn't taking on this position of, okay, this teacher is I know less than this person, then my money goes to waste, right? And in this day and age, we pretty much have to pay money for everything, because everybody needs money to exist, to live. It's just another form of energy and currency in which we trade things with each other. So you can't get around that, right? So even if, I were to start coaching, I would still require some money from people, right? But the idea is that the knowledge that I'm giving is more powerful, it's more valuable than the money that is being exchanged. And that only happens when the student is willing to learn, is submissive. Another, I think, big important quality of a student, and we kind of touched on it, is curiosity, right? So as long as we remain curious, we'll continuously learn. And we can apply curiosity to everything. So if you're in a argument with a friend or a family member, and they say something, and usually what we do is we just defend ourselves and we fight back, right? But if in that moment we become curious and ask them, wait, what do you mean by this? Like, what do you mean that I hurt you? Or what do you mean that, you think I'm mean, or whatever it is that in that moment the argument is about? And you switch it to being curious about what the other person is thinking, feeling, trying to understand. This is also a form of learning. In that moment, you switch from, being closed to being a student, and it can diffuse any, situation in that moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree, but it's showing a willingness to understand and validate the other person's side. And that's a different, type of submissiveness, as well as, willing to learn. So it can be applied not just in, learning knowledge, but it's applied even in our everyday relationships. If we're having a hard time, it's super hot outside, 100 and something degrees, and we can think, well, it didn't happen, I'm going to knock on wood, but sometimes in the past we've had the power goes out because the load is too much on the power grid, and so the power goes out for a little while. And I actually remember in the beginning of the summer, the power had gone out all night, and I, just because of where I'm at life, I really need the air conditioning at night. I don't use it during the day, but at nighttime, I need it because I need it to be really cool in order for me to sleep, because I get really hot at night. And it went out at 7:30 in the evening and did not turn back on until about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't sleep all night. It was so uncomfortable. And these kind of challenges happen to us all the time, right? And if we're closed off, we can have this idea of why is this happening to me? Life sucks. This is terrible. And but if we stop all that and become curious in that moment, what is the purpose of this? What am I to gain? What can I learn from this? This is happening. This is terrible. And it could be as simple as, I'm too attached to the air conditioning, or it could be something even deeper to, understanding that I'm not this body, that it's so at the mercy of the whims of nature. And even though we have all these man-made, artificial ways of combating nature, right, with air conditioning and heating and artificial lights, to, that nothing is foolproof, that nature is still stronger than all of that, right? So there's so many things that in that moment when we're struggling, that if we can switch to being curious, that it can change the way we think about the situation, and that even though the pain and discomfort is there, our suffering can lessen. So all these things about being a student, it can be applied in so many different areas of our lives. Bringing it back to spiritual topics, it does, it's very important that we have this thing when we're dealing with learning knowledge, right? Because the moment we think, I know, we stop listening, we stop learning, we stop, and I forgot to quote it here, but there is a study that shows that deep into old age, seniority, as the more people are still willing to learn and understand, the more youthful they are. And so learning actually keeps us youthful. It keeps our brain working. It's one of the ways they say, to combat Alzheimer's or dementia is to constantly, study and use your brain and kind of keep learning. So the moment we stop learning, we stop growing, and when we stop growing, we're on our way to death, right? So it's a great way to stay youthful as well. And then, of course, what are we learning? We have to look at that as well. And that's where, coming back to the verses that we're looking at, Narada Muni is telling us these are the important things that we're learning. Who is God? The world, learning about the world. Who are we? What is our place in the world? And then who are the people around us, right? So he's asking about Brahma. And when we look at all of that, we have all the answers here in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as, inquiring from each other, and we're constantly learning. Even when I'm giving Srimad Bhagavatam class, when I ask the questions, I'm constantly learning. I'm learning from you all, the students that are here listening and responding. I'm learning from you, because I see a different viewpoint or something different than what I would have thought. I'm learning also because I had to study in order to be able to teach, right? So I had to learn from that perspective. So when we look at that, what we're learning really is those three major things. Who are we? Where do we come from? And what is our purpose? And when we find out in this chapter that really we are all servants of Krishna, of God, and we're eternal beings of knowledge and bliss, right? And so knowledge is a big part of who we are, and that's why we are curious. And when we tap into that curiosity, it helps us tap into the bliss, right? I don't know if you've ever had this experience, and if you had, you can share, where you've been curious about something, and just that curiosity brings this lightness and happiness to you. I know it does for me. Sometimes I'll go through a rabbit hole, right? I'll hear about something and I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about that. And you start Googling and reading articles here and there, and you just, as you're learning more and the more curious you get, it's kind of like there's a brightness that happens. There's this sense of wow, this is cool information. And what is the first thing that we want to do when we learn all this is share it with others, talk about it, right? And so then, sometimes I become that weird person that talks about weird topics because I've been researching it the whole time, right? And we see that in kids. Students, children are naturally curious, and then they're naturally apt to share it, right? So my nephew, he was obsessed with dinosaurs for a little while, right? And so his knowledge of dinosaurs was knowing the different names. He just turned 3 last week, so it's a big thing. So he would just be every time I would talk to him or see him, he would just name dinosaurs for me, right? And that was he was curious about it, he learned it, and then he wanted to share it. So we can see these qualities are very natural for us to learn and to share. And that's part of the whole process. So does anyone have any stories that they want to share about feeling curious and how it made you feel? Yes.
I think, especially within Krishna consciousness, I grew up Christian, so coming into another religious kind of organization, I had different walls up and cautions. So when I would meet other people with different philosophies, at first I'd be I don't know, I don't believe that, I don't think that's true. Very guarded. But then the more that I started learning about the philosophy and really building my faith and having an understanding that everything
Oh, thank you for sharing. That's wonderful. So the story she shared is that she grew up Christian, and when she initially started hearing about different philosophies, she was very closed and was like, no, this is, doesn't coincide with what she was taught and believed. But as she opened up and started learning more and became filled with a sense of wonderment, wonder is another really great word, she started learning more, and it had this feeling of acceptance and tolerance and patience and it just felt so much better than when she was closed off to the information. Exactly, yeah. I think we've all, even growing up in ISKCON and, raised as a Hare Krishna, sometimes I can still be closed off to information that I hear from not just other religions, but even from other speakers in ISKCON. And I have to remind myself that I can learn something from everyone, that I don't know more than, other people. And when I do, it's like, oh, that light bulb moment, right? It goes off like, oh, wow, yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's a great way to think of it. So thank you for sharing. Yes?
I was just thinking about curiosity and one sense of wonder that even is for connecting with other people. Because you see something peculiar about a person, or you don't understand why they're doing something, and then you start asking questions, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why do you, whatever, you just ask them all these questions. You want to understand them and be curious, like what is their story, what is their belief that led them to be this way, where are they coming from? And then, and then you give people an opportunity to explain themselves, share something about their values, their beliefs, and things that inspire them, and you can take them to show them about the person. And sometimes we just walk around and, we just sort of see people as whatever, not very interesting, you know what I mean? But if we have this sense of curiosity, we can, if you ask anybody a question, you can ask them to be response. And when people feel understood, then, they also, they feel appreciated, and it's just nice. It's the basis of a good relationship.
Thank you for sharing that. So true. So she was saying that curiosity can also help improve relationships. Like you can see someone, they look peculiar or doing something, but instead of judging, if you start to ask them questions like what, and try to learn and understand what brought them there, what's going on with them, what happened to them, learn their story, they feel understood, and you also understand them. And so it builds better relationships. Definitely. I know that we have this tendency, that's why we have this parable of don't judge a book by its cover. But we have this tendency to, make assumptions about people based on past experiences, beliefs that we have, and then how that person fits into that scenario. And more times than not, they don't, right? Because each of us are unique and individual, but until we take the time to inquire and find out, then we don't understand that person. We're not going to understand that person. And each one of us has great stories to share, Each one of us has had interesting things, even if we think that they're not interesting. We've had interesting experiences to share that so many of us can learn from. And then the other big thing with that is when we ask people questions and we understand them, and we're trying to understand them, they're more willing to listen to any knowledge we may have to impart, right? So I experienced this a lot when, on both sides of it, right? When we talk about like health issues, and if you have, some sort of health issue, people are like, oh, try this and try that and do this. And sometimes it can be frustrating when you're on the receiving end of that, because you're like, you don't know anything, and you're just giving me advice, like you're not willing to listen, right? And unless they start going, well, what have you tried? And, what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you? And they start asking questions. Then when they give you advice, it becomes a little bit more like, oh, well, they kind of took more information from me, and now they're able to give me better advice. It's the same thing if we start to understand people and then we say, wow, this is just like in the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they're more open and willing to even hear about God and Krishna and these topics, right? So first we have to understand them, and then, they can understand what it is that we're offering for them. And it's that same, it happens, it doesn't happen so like overtly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but it does happen where, Sukadeva Goswami doesn't just straight away start giving information. He first, sets the background, he asks questions, and then he starts answering. So we see that a lot too, like Krishna first let Arjuna speak. There's like the whole first chapter and, a fourth that Arjuna's just asking questions, and, and even before Krishna gives any answers, he asks for a little more clarification, and then he starts speaking, and then he still allows for the questions, right? So he's realizing that it's a dialogue, even though he's teaching, it's still a dialogue, and that's how we can, really gain our own knowledge as well as impart knowledge and improve our relationships. I'm sure we've all had the experience where unwanted advice actually kind of makes you think, well, I don't want to talk to that person because they're just going to, give me advice that I'm not ready for, don't want to hear, or, it's not right for me. And yeah, I've had that experience, and I think I've been on the other side of that experience. And, with time, you learn what's important, right? So, yeah. What other questions? So I'll open the floor now for questions, or if you still want to have any other comments or things that you want to share. Yes.
Well, I wanted to point out to you maybe something about how in the 7th chapter of Radha, Krishna talks about 4 types of people who surrender unto him,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them is the inquisitive, the one who's curious, and like Narayana is exhibiting that quality from far enough to the absolute truth, which they can ever listen. But that's how I became a devotee, was just out of curiosity. Well, what is this about? Who is this person? And why is he, standing like this? And then am I taking me in? And that's how I was teasing my husband. I was like, I got you because I was curious. There was this brahmachari, and I would ask a question and he knew the answer. And I was like, no way. Tell me more about that. And he's like, point at a river and tell me a story about a river. And I'm like, really? So all of this just being open and curious led me to some really, treasured relationships in my life.
Thank you for sharing. So the story shared was that, she was very curiosity led her to, ask questions and learn more about Krishna, and even, led her to meet her now husband, and because she would just ask questions and he would tell her stories about Krishna, and she would be like more curious, and so that helped develop that connection and bond that they have in their relationship. Thank you for sharing. Anyone have any other questions or thoughts they want to share? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for bringing this up today. I love when you're sharing about how curiosity seems to open up the space and even disarm, hostility. And what I was feeling as you're sharing was the power of a form of curiosity called compassionate inquiry
Mm-hmm.
that seems to evoke kind of a deeper space with people that they may have, or that we may feel is like forbidden ground, but because that curiosity has a space or a ground to rest on, or like a safe space,
Mm-hmm.
then it
Yeah, it's great points that you made. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to try to sum up as much as I can remember. But she first felt like it was a really great topic that we talked about curiosity and how it can be disarming for hostility, and that it can create a safe space where people can feel heard. And she thought about compassionate inquiry. And then it was kind of touched on like the difference between compliance and, submissive surrender in terms of with love and reverence. Is that correct? Okay. Does anyone want to give their thoughts on that? Yes.
I was actually thinking, like, when this, when you were asking what are the qualities of the students, and these ideas of submissiveness and understanding myself recently came up. I was wanting to say, I didn't even talk too much, but I was wanting to say that, like, if we look at the tradition, the traditional guru-disciple relationship, it's not just a hierarchical thing, where you recognize that this person's superior, this person's an authority, you have to submit to them. It's a loving relationship. And even now, in this kind of guru-disciple relationships, if you ask anybody, about their religion, the religion is initiated about their religion, they're going to speak with so much love and affection. And if you ask any guru about the disciple, they're going to speak about the disciple with love and affection. It's a very affectionate, sweet, caring relationship. So, yeah, it's much different from, kind of like an academic, institutional, professor-student relationship or trainer and trainee relationship. I guess the spiritual element, because when we're talking about bhakti, this is all in the context of bhakti, and bhakti, the nature of it is devotion, it's full of sweetness and love and devotion. So the relationships that exist within the realm of bhakti are also radiant that sweetness. So yeah, there's a acceptance that this person is, more advanced than me, they know more than me, I can learn from them, but also it's very much like a mutual love and trust as well.
That's a wonderful point. So she says that at the heart of the relationship between a teacher and student, the spiritual master and the disciple, is love. It's not just this idea that the teacher is knowledgeable and reverent. There's this love that's reciprocated. And I totally agree with that. When I was just thinking the other day of my spiritual teacher, master, is that I also refer to him as my spiritual father, right? So there was that loving parental type relationship that's there. And I know he often thought of me as his daughter, his spiritual daughter. So there is that. I do want to come back to your point, and that compliance, it almost is like a forceful surrender, not done with love, right? So this is the point that she's bringing in, that love makes all the difference when we're doing something for someone because we want to, because we love them, we want to make them happy. It's totally different than feeling obligated and like, oh, I'm doing this. And many of the times that we have this kind of, relationship in school with our teachers, at work with our bosses, it's because we have to. Like, we're obligated. There's not this, our sense of curiosity doesn't come into play because it's like, this is the way and that's it, right? And so what we're saying is that this is different. Our spiritual relationships are different because surrender doesn't mean that we're, becoming enslaved. It means that we are understanding that we may not have the answers for this and that someone else does, and that we're taking that position of submissiveness, right? But we're also looking at who is it that we're learning from. A teacher or a boss may not be qualified, but our spiritual teacher, we can look at, I've given a whole talk on the qualifications of a spiritual teacher, right? But really the biggest qualification there also is that, are they a good student, right? And Srila Prabhupada often quotes that his biggest qualification is that he's just a very disciplined and strong student of his spiritual teacher. And that's all he's doing is bringing forth his teachings, right? So we can see that he's a highly qualified teacher because he understands that he's still a student. So, that's one of the biggest things that we can do is who are we putting this kind of trust and faith in, and understanding also that no one is 100% perfect, right? We're all going to have our flaws, but what can we learn and how can we grow, and are they constantly growing as well and learning as well? So, and then at some point we just kind of surrender to Krishna, to God, and have trust and faith that he will lead us on the right path. He will lead us to the right teacher. And, one of the things sometimes I pray to Krishna and Kalachandji is, always keep me curious, always keep me humble, right? Like, I always want to be learning, but, keep that sense of wonderment. I want to keep that sense of wonderment. So it's one of my prayers that I have when I, sit down to pray. So, and we've kind of passed time. So if, anyone wants to get up and go get breakfast, please feel free to. We can still chat for one more question and then we'll go. Yes. Uh-huh. Right, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing. She was sharing that when you have met your spiritual teacher, there's such a feeling of love, and there is a sense of obligation in the sense of love is compelling you, right? It's creating that compliance. And so sometimes from the outside, somebody may not understand it, but there's this internal feeling of so much love, and you're willing to understand that this person knows more than you, and therefore you're willing to inquire, be subordinate. And it's true in this day and age, words like submissive, surrender, subordinate, all these S words, they can have deep fear. They can raise deep fear in us because we may have experienced adverse relationships as a result, right? So our traumas can kind of help us to understand why we have a hard time surrendering or inquiring submissively, because in the past we may have been burned by doing so. And that's part of our spiritual journey, is navigating through our past traumas, our past samskaras, past experiences, and opening ourselves up to new ones, and trusting and having faith that God is going to protect us in all these, even if it seems like it doesn't, right? Because we're still humans interacting with humans, and we can feel hurt or crushed or something, even by our spiritual teacher, because of the fact that sometimes they say, the medicine that they're giving is not one that we're ready to take, or it has a bitter taste. But when we have this curiosity, we bring that curiosity into that and think, okay, well, what am I to gain from this? How is this for me? Then we start to see that, oh, okay, maybe this is why they said that, or this is why they instructed us in this way, instead of, if we're closed off, then obviously it's going to hurt more. So it's a double-edged sword, but we have trust and faith that Krishna will always protect us, right? So I will end here. Usually I like to say that when we have a space of inspiration and motivation, we don't want to leave without a commitment to action. So our commitment to action is, spend some time this week being curious about something that you normally would not be curious about, that would normally maybe get your defenses up. And, so be a little curious about that, and then ask for curiosity during your prayers with Krishna. So I'll end here. Jarantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki.